on this Saturday. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Nawfal, and these are today's headlines. Turkey's prime minister says 161 people killed in the coup attempt against the government, with over 2,800 soldiers now detained on suspicion of involvement. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan battles to regain the control over his country after the coup bid by discontented soldiers, and signs grow that the most serious challenge to his 13 years of dominant rule is starting to falter. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister says he welcomes the release of a long classified section of the official report on the September 11 attacks. Welcome to those tuning in. Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim says 161 people were killed in the coup attempt against his government, with over 2,800 soldiers now detained on suspicion of involvement. Yildirim, speaking outside his Kankaya Palace in Ankara and flanked by top general Hulusi Akar, who was held during the coup attempt, also described the putsch bid as a black stain on Turkish democracy. He added that 1,440 people had been wounded. The toll of 161 did not include the assailants, he emphasized. Turkey's acting army chief Umit Dundar had earlier said 104 putschtists had been killed. Yildirim blamed the coup attempt on the supporters of U.S.-based Turkish cleric Fethullah Gulen, who Ankara has for years accused of working to overthrow the authorities and wants to see brought to justice. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is battling to regain the control over his country after the coup bid by discontented soldiers, and signs are growing that the most serious challenge to his 13 years of dominant rule is starting to falter. After hours of chaos unseen in decades, Erdogan ended uncertainty over his whereabouts, flying into Istanbul airport in the early hours, where he made a defiant speech and was greeted by hundreds of supporters. Soldiers and tanks took to the streets late on Friday, and multiple explosions rang out throughout the night in Ankara and Istanbul, the two biggest cities of the strategic NATO member of 80 million people. With officials insisting the takeover bid was falling apart, officials said 60 people, mainly civilians, have been killed and 800 soldiers detained. Erdogan predicted the putsch would fail, and crowds of supporters of the ruling Justice and Development Party came out onto the streets to try to block it. European officials are reacting to this. British Foreign Minister Boris Johnson says he has spoken to his counterpart in Turkey to underline the UK's support for the country's democratically elected government following the military coup there. The former mayor of London, who became foreign minister under the new government of Prime Minister Theresa May this week, also called for calm after monitoring the situation throughout the night.
Obviously, we've been monitoring the situation in Turkey very closely overnight and remain very concerned about what's been going on there. And the first thing to say is obviously we want to urge calm, the avoidance of any further bloodshed, and it's crucial that we support the democratic institutions of Turkey. And that's a message that was very much echoed, of course, by the Turkish foreign minister, my counterpart Mehmet Çavuşoğlu, to whom I spoke a couple of hours ago. And he was very grateful for UK support at the UN and elsewhere. And obviously I've also spoken to our diplomatic staff in Ankara and in Istanbul, and they're doing a fantastic job. They're working very hard, as you can imagine, to do the best for the many Brits who are there, the many people who are there on holiday, and they should follow the travel advice, and we'll do our best to update you as soon as we can.
The Islamic State, also known as Daesh, is claiming responsibility for the truck attack in the French city of Nice that plowed into a busy street after Bastille Day celebrations. Police have arrested 5 people they suspect have links to the carnage that claimed the lives of at least 84. Residents and tourists in Nice lay flowers and candles today at memorials for the victims of the attack that plunged France into new grief and fear just 8 months after gunmen killed 130 people in Paris. A man drove a 90-ton truck at high speed into crowds as fireworks show to mark France's Bastille Day national holiday came to an end, zigzagging along the city's seafront Promenade des Anglais. He was shot dead after a run of some 2 kilometers after he opened fire from his vehicle with a pistol. And on the line to discuss this further, live from Paris, is Vincent Desportes, a retired French Army general and professor of military strategy at Sciences Po and HEC. Vincent, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, please.
Vincent, this is the third attack in about a year and a half in France. One of the deadliest after the November attacks just last year. What is France? How is France doing right now?
Excuse me?
How is France doing right now? How are they reacting to this?
Oh, there is a feeling of solidarity in France, and I think that France, unfortunately, is more and more accustomed to this kind of attack, and we are becoming more and more mature. That's terrible to say, but everybody knows now that the same kind of attack can happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So we are more and more resilient. At the same time, everybody has in a political arena has a lot of ideas to improve the security situation, and there is effectively still a lot to do. We can improve the situation in France, but I think that the French were very struck by that attack, obviously. But I think that France, obviously, is a great country, and the French people is strong enough to react properly.
Right. You know, as you know, you just mentioned that the security situation and officials have different opinions about how to handle the security situation. When President François Hollande arrived in Nice, a lot of people greeted him not in the kindest way. A lot of people do blame him for the failing, they say, security situation. What do you think? How do you think he has been handling this? Because he's had a lot on his plate.
Obviously, this attack is a failure. This attack is a failure of our security system, and obviously the current government is in charge of the security of French people. So I am absolutely sure that we can do better. Obviously, political people of the right wing are attacking President Hollande for what he has not done.
Well, the people from the right, and also just just your everyday average citizens as well.
Yeah, you're perfectly right. It is a failure. So we can always say that what has been done enable us to avoid some other attacks. But the fact is that this attack occurred yesterday. But you know, we are France is one of the main targets of ISIS.
Right.
And we can put a policeman behind any truck in France, or a policeman before any synagogue, in front of any synagogue in France. So this kind of attack will happen again. So I think that the French people must know that we need to live with this fear and to be strongest than this fear.
You know, you talk about, you know, a lot of analysts, as well as you just said this kind of attack can happen again. There is a significant, we discovered that the identity of this man, he was a French-Tunisian man, aged 31 years old. There is a significant Muslim population in France, and so far the three big incidents that have happened in the last year and a half have been done by people that have pledged alliance to Daesh or ISIS. So what do you think the French Muslim right now, it's getting harder for them. How do you think the French should react with this, vis-a-vis to this?
That's very difficult to say. So first, I have to say that it's not a Franco-Tunisian guy. It's just a pure Tunisian guy. You know, it was not French. He wasn't French. But you're right. This is a main issue. How the French people is going to react with the Muslim population, and we have a lot of Muslim people in France. I think around 6 million people.
Right.
So they are living with us. And it is. A big part of the issue, the government must take measures, but at the same time, he he must make the French people live with all these Muslim people that are French too, and this is really the very difficult issue.
Well, what do you think is the root? Let me just finish with this question. What do you think is the root of the problem today?
The root of the issue. I think France is France. France is a symbol of liberty, of freedom, and all these values that ISIS doesn't like and even dislike, first. And secondly, we are attacking, we are the European country attacking them the more in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. So we are a target, but France does what she must do, and we are going to go on to make our attack in Middle East easier and stronger. It is just like that, you know. In a continent like Europe, you need some very strong country. But when you are a strong country, you are attacked. It is just like that, you know. Right. There are a lot of weak countries that are not attacked. We are a strong country. We are a symbol. It is just like that. We have to live with our history and the fact that we are a symbol.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was Vincent Desportes, live from Paris, talking about the Nice attack. Coming up next, Donald Trump picks his pick as vice president. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The top diplomats of Russia and the United States joined forces to pay tribute to the victims of the Nice attacks, but remain divided on how to deal with the war in Syria. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov took a break from their talks to visit the French embassy in Moscow to sign a book of condolences before returning to their discussions. A Russian delegation official told reporters that a planned news conference had been postponed for at least 2 hours while the two sides separated to confer privately. After observing a minute's silence for the victims ahead of the talks, Kerry stressed the urgency of closer cooperation in Syria after the Kremlin said Friday a U.S. proposal for direct military cooperation in the war-torn country had not been addressed in earlier talks with President Vladimir Putin. Kerry's meeting with Lavrov, which had been expected to finish earlier, follows what the top U.S. diplomat said were serious and frank talks with Putin on Thursday. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister says he welcomes the release of a long classified section of the official report on the September 11th attacks that discuss potential links between some of the hijackers and Saudi Arabia. The 28 pages of the report on the 2002 investigation focus on potential Saudi links to the 2001 aircraft attacks on the United States, in which nearly 3,000 people died. They were issued by the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee on Friday after years of wrangling in Washington between Congress and different administrations, Republicans and Democrats, and urging by families of those killed.
Today, Saudi Arabia welcomes the release of the 28 pages redacted from the joint inquiry of Congress into the 9/11 events. We have called for the release of these pages from the moment they were redacted. We believed at the time that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia cannot respond to charges emanating from blank pages. We stated in the clearest terms possible that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has nothing to fear, that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is determined to go after the terrorists, those who finance them and those who justify their actions. The CIA director, the director of national intelligence, came out and said that there is no involvement of the Saudi government or Saudi officials in the events of 9/11. The Senate Intelligence Committee did its own investigation, came to the same conclusion, and so the matter is now finished. Anything that can be done to bring the Russians into the fight against Daesh in an effective way is something that I think people would welcome. But it cannot be at the cost of keeping Bashar al-Assad in power, and it cannot be with the Russians continuing to attack the moderate Syrian opposition.
On rebel-held districts of Syria's battleground Sig and city of Aleppo have killed 18 civilians. The Britain-based observatory, which relies on a network of sources across Syria for its information, warned that the toll could rise due to the number of critically wounded. A correspondent of the Agence France-Presse said the scene of the helicopters and fighter jets were still circling rebel-held neighborhoods, adding that barrel bombs, crude unguided explosive devices had been dropped on several areas. The observatory said rebel fighters shelled government-controlled western areas of Aleppo, but had no immediate word on any casualties. Aleppo city is divided roughly between government control in the west and rebel control in the east. In the United States, shortly after Republican Donald Trump announced Indiana Governor Mike Pence as his vice presidential running mate, Pence arrived at Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan to meet with the presumptive candidate for U.S. president. Republican sources said that Trump had decided on Pence on Thursday, but the campaign had not confirmed this until Friday. Trump had postponed the event to announce his decision following the deadly truck attack in Nice, France. Pence was prepared with questions from journalists as he arrived at Trump Tower. He told them that the last 24 hours have been very exciting and that he was very honored, very humbled, very grateful to be chosen as Trump's running mate. Viewed as a safe pair of hands, Pence, who is 57 years old, has diverging views with Trump on his proposed Muslim ban and trade and is more socially conservative. And on that note, we mark the end of our bulletin now for a reminder of our top stories. Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim says 161 people killed in the coup attempt against his government, with over 2,000 soldiers detained. Turkey's president battles to regain control over Turkey after a coup bid by discontented soldiers, and it's a sign that they are growing serious challenges to his 13 years of dominant rule. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister says he welcomes the release of a long classified section of the September 11 attacks that discuss potential links between the hijackers and the kingdom. Those are your Saturday headlines live on Future Television. Have a great weekend and be safe.